Hey, and welcome back. Today I'll be planting this new Foresta 75E Paludarium, so follow me along. All Forestas come with these Foresta mats. They come unplanted, so you'll need to wrap them individually. And the nice thing about these is that they'll just slot right into the pegs, like so. You can also even tie rhizome plants to it, and the rhizome plants like Anubias or Bobitis or even Java fern will grow and root itself from the mat. And they're very similar to filter sponge material. So as the water cascades down from the backdrop, the water will permeate through the moss and through the mats and drip down to where the water is in the aquarium portion of this tank. In this 75E, there's about 18 mats total. They slot in pretty much perfectly. These are like 3x3 inch mats. My personal preference is that I like a full green wall, which is why I've only done moss only. And once again, this is Christmas moss. All Forestas also include the line, which is basically a nylon thread. It won't disintegrate over time. And what you use this for is to tie the moss around the mats. And this is how I tied it. You can see from the back. And then you can't really see from the front because the green pretty much blends in with the rest of the moss. Now I'm going into tying. Normally I'm doing this sitting down, so it might look a little clumsy, sorry. And I usually just double knot, and it should be secure. Usually I like planting from foreground to background. However, in this case, with the Foresta, since I already planted the background pretty much, it's easier for me to kind of visualize the differences in leaf textures if I were to plant from the background to the foreground. So I have 4 plants. There's a smaller Homalomena, there's a broader leaf Homalomena, peace lily, which is mainly like a terrestrial bog type plant, and then another terrestrial bog type plant, mondo grass. So leafy greens first, then grassy. I usually like to do the hardscape first, and then the plants will come to me. And when I first saw what I had created in terms of the hardscape, I instantly knew I wanted a ton of darker green plants, and I wanted them to be leafy. Usually these Forestas don't really call for highlight or anything. You don't need much to grow these Forestas. You also don't want to have a very bright light shining right up against the moss, because moss doesn't like heat and it will dry out very quickly. So the plants that I also chose are pretty low light tolerant. Next up, I'm planting the peace lily. And the cool thing about this plant in a terrestrial environment, especially when it's humid, is it constantly sends out white flowers. When planting something like this, and you know you're using very thick-rooted plants, you don't want to plant them too closely. You want to leave some space in between each plant, because the roots will kind of suffocate all their neighboring plants. So if you compare kind of the root structure of this broadleaf Homalomena, it demands a lot of space. And once I plant it right in there, I only have room for probably like 2 or 3 of these plants. So to kind of offset the leafy textures that I have here, I'm planting this grass plant. And this is a terrestrial only plant, so I need to make sure that it's in the substrate above the water line and not submerged. This plant will not grow submerged. So next up, I'm moving on to the midground area. This is Bobitus mini. I love it for its fern look. It's super delicate, so you want to be very careful with it when planting. The leaves might get damaged. And what I'm going to do is really just split these rhizomes apart and spread them throughout. I like to have these closer to water, but not underwater. So when I'm placing it here, it will contrast very well with these slim, straight and narrow grass leaves. And another trick you can do is to take the smaller sprigs and slip them in between the Foresta mats, and they'll hold. And eventually, once they root, they'll root into the Foresta mats and they'll form little bushes throughout. So I can pretty much create like a tree-like structure. So right now I'm just wedging the rhizome of the Bobitus fern in between mats. And I love how the fern kind of looks like it's drooping over. It gives the flatter moss wall a three-dimensional pop to it. Next up, we have a fan favorite, dwarf sag. I've actually never planted this before, but it's very easy to grow. It grows in low light conditions, which is perfect for this because we're not going to be blasting light in this Foresta. And so I'm just going to go through and plant sporadically throughout the base. And this is to have the continuity of this terrestrial mondel grass and the aquatic counterpart. This plant will spread as runners, which means one of these will send an offshoot and send another offshoot and then send another offshoot. So this can quite possibly take over this whole bottom section if we don't maintain it well. Just filling in some gaps that I know I already have. And this is being planted directly in sand, which is also why I chose this plant, because it has very little requirements in terms of nutrients. In the foreground will be yet another grassy plant, and it's going to be Eleucharis parvulus mini, which is dwarf hairgrass, the miniature version. And I'm just going to sprinkle them in throughout the base of the stone and wood, just to give that much more grown in look right from the beginning. And as you can see, after I plant it, I'm pushing some sand from all around it into itself so that it lodges it better. And finally, what's a paludarium without Anubias? And I'm just gonna go throughout the hardscape, find gaps that don't look very natural, and just jab these in between and call it a day. And if you notice, throughout this whole planting, I didn't really use any glue. I'm just finding natural gaps and crevices to place these plants. And personally, I prefer it that way, just because it's a little bit more natural. Okay, now the tank's filled and we're ready to set up the remaining equipment, which will be the light and the UNS Nimbus misting system. I'm using the Nimbus system because it's an optional piece for a Foresta, because the Foresta already has the cascading waterfall along with the atomizer. But in this scenario, it's just my own preference because this Foresta is way bigger than the ones that we've previously had. I just want to have a consistent misting on the plants that are still transitioning from submerged to emersed growth. So I'm going to set up a misting nozzle on this side and this side right here. So just follow along while I set this up. So that's it for the video. I hope you guys liked what you saw. And if you like aquascaping, planted tanks, reef aquariums, hit that like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know how you would upscape this.